So I began puberty a little bit earlier than usual. I was one of the first girls in my class to start developing breasts and curves. I was about 8 or 9 years old.
I'm imagining that your classmates are going, "What's wrong with you? Why do you look like
People
this?"
would say a lot of uncomfortable things about me.
Right.
A lot of very, very sexually charged things about me. Sometimes even adults around me would comment on my developing breasts or my legs, and
That's horrible.
it just about middle school when I started seeing all this confusing messaging around womanhood and eventually around like gender and sexuality. I learned about the transgender community through online influences, and it all of a sudden it seemed like everything was just clicking.
This is Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags.
We became aware of this young lady just a few years ago. It was a story that nobody wants to hear happen to somebody who's under 18, doesn't realize the information that's coming in is an indoctrinating information. She made a decision, then turned the decision back, and now is with us. It's Chloe Cole. That was kind of an interesting way to introduce you. I didn't want to get too in-depth because I want you to tell the whole story. First of all, we've been friends a long time. Finally met in person. Thanks for coming on the show. How are you?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm loving this conference so far.
Isn't it awesome? I mean, the people are going completely ballistic. These speeches are empowering. They're motivating. And I'm glad that you're here because you're powerful and you're motivating. Let's start from the start. How old were you when there was some confusion, either pushed by society? I don't know if your parents were. I want to do all of it. I want to find out where you first got the idea that maybe I'm not in the right body. How does that happen?
So I began puberty a little bit earlier than usual. I was one of the first girls in my class to start developing breasts and curves. I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I mean, with that came a lot of excitement, but also a lot of newfound responsibility and discomforts. And it was kind of a confusing thing to navigate so young, especially without much adult guidance.
Hey, can I ask how old you were?
I was 9 years old when puberty started for me.
So 8 or 9, and I'm imagining that your classmates are going, "What's wrong with you? Why do you look like
People
this?"
would say a lot of uncomfortable things about me.
Right.
A lot of very, very sexually charged things about me. Sometimes even adults around me would comment on my developing breasts or my legs, and
That's horrible.
it was very uncomfortable, and like it made me want to
You're
crawl
not
out of my
even 10
skin.
yet.
No. And I kind of grew up with a lot of very precocious peers around me. I learned about pornography very young. I learned about a lot of these very, very age-inappropriate concepts very, very early on in my life. So I had kind of a skewed idea of what it meant to be a woman, where my value came from as a woman. And for a lot of my formative years, I thought it came from aesthetics. I thought it came from sexuality. I thought it came from my body rather than the content of my character or the mark that I would leave on my family or my community. And
Let me ask you this, because there's so much going on there. I developed late, I think, so I didn't deal with what you were dealing with, and I'm not a female, so I didn't deal with obvious things that are changing, noticeably visually that are changing, that people are commenting on. But I can imagine you've got your peers that are already going, "Why do you look like that? Why is that happening to you?" But getting the attention from the older people, I mean, that goes to a different level of disgusting. Kids are stupid, and they're young, and they don't get it yet. The adults should have known better. Like, what was going on there? Could you hear them saying things? Did they say things to you?
Yeah, sometimes like my teachers would comment on the changes happening in my body, or even like sometimes like it was male teachers like complimented me on the way that I looked.
No.
But even like
Okay.
adults online would sometimes like go into inappropriate territory with me. And I also, from a very young age, had already felt isolated. I was diagnosed with a learning disability earlier in my life, and I always felt like something just made me different in some way that separated me from my peers. And at first, I thought it was just the fact that I was a tomboy, and I didn't always relate to my female peers in terms of my interest or my beliefs or
Which, by the way,
values
you
or sense of
probably
humor.
were. You just got bad information. You probably were a tomboy. I mean, I grew up with tomboys who ended up being beautiful women, you know.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I was very much in the middle of being girly and being a more boyish kind of girl.
Right.
But this is something that I took pride in until about middle school, when I started seeing all this confusing messaging around womanhood and eventually around like gender and sexuality. I learned about the transgender community through online influences, and it all of a sudden it seemed like everything was just clicking. I felt understood, even without directly talking to these people. It was like they were like a mirror of a lot of my childhood experiences and my feelings, and they seemed to be so happy and so fulfilled in pursuing this path of going down, imitating the opposite sex. And I thought,
I totally get it, because you don't have an identity at that point. You're not an 8-year-old visually. You're getting weird attention from adults. You don't feel like there's no place for you to plug in and say, I'm part of that. And this looked like it was when you saw this online. The
right. These kids were just like me in so many different ways. And so I thought, I must be one of them. Maybe the thing that really sucked me in was this theory that gender dysphoria is a physical condition, that these feelings of discomfort stem from having having differently structured brains that mimic the opposite sex more. And I thought, well, maybe there's a reason why I act more like the boys. Maybe there's a reason why I'm a tomboy, and it's not just that. Maybe I was really destined to be a boy, and I have to change myself in order to be happy.
Who's the adult in your life at that point? Because an adult should have said, let's talk about it, Chloe. And it sounds like that didn't happen.
I told my mom and dad about my feelings, and they didn't really know how to move forward. And they certainly did. They never believed that I was transgender. They never believed that I was a boy or that I was their son or anything. No, not at all. They wanted me to be safe. They wanted me to not be on any drugs or anything. They didn't want me to go on anything permanent. They just wanted to allow me to be a tomboyish girl and to express myself within age-appropriate boundaries. But they also thought, there must be something deeper here, something psychological that we don't really know how to get to the bottom of. But maybe if we see a psychologist, they are going to do that for us. And they're going to help us understand as our parents. They're going to help her understand her feelings. And she's going to be taught how to cope with this and deal with these feelings. But that never happened.
It's crazy. It's Chloe Cole. I want you to go right now and check her out online. You got to say CHLOOO or something?
CHOOOCOLE.
Okay.
Or you can also find me just by looking up Chloe Cole.
Okay. So CHOOO?
Yes.
Cole.
3 O's, yes.
Yeah, we follow each other over on X. If you follow me, you can find Chloe. Also follow her on Instagram. Really lame Instagram page so far. No, I'm kidding. She's doing great on Instagram. We're going to help you blow that up. I mean, seriously. All right, so your parents did the right thing. I didn't know that. Your parents are not buying into she's the opposite gender.
Absolutely not.
Does the psychologist do it?
Yes. And so our appointments were pretty much separated. I was separate from my mom and dad. And
so you're getting advisement or advice from this person away from your parents who are looking out for you.
And the extent of the advice was really just being asked, well, what do you want us to call you? What do you believe you are? And focused on what I believed and what I felt rather than my actual needs at the time. And they followed really what was only an affirmation-only model. So they would just say, yes, 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 yes. No real questioning of these feelings or how they might play into my identity.
Did he or she tell you not to tell your parents?
No.
Or did you share that with them?
No, I shared with my mom and dad, but our conversations were not shared with them. And so my mom and dad had no idea what was really being expressed in these appointments or what advice I was getting, which was honestly nothing of substance, really, other than, yes, you're a boy.
How old are you at that point?
I was 12 going on 13.
Okay, so you're not even like a teen yet.
No.
You're 12.
Yes.
And your parents see this person as authority.
Yes.
You see this person as authority. So you must think at 12, oh, this person's got to be right.
Right.
So are you even questioning it at that point?
No, because, I mean, I was reading not only the anecdotes of these people in the transgender community who were my age, but also, and relating with them, but also, like, actual medical literature, some of which was from my healthcare provider on this issue. And so I thought, like, there's, like, a huge, like, strong basis. Yeah,
yeah.
But I didn't know that. And as a 12-year-old, I didn't really have the ability to discern that. But so my mom and dad started getting frustrated because I was not getting better. I was not improving at all.
Well, you're getting further confused by the doctor.
Yes, further confused, going to my 8th grade year with no friends, no identity really. And so they decided to speak to the doctors themselves, and they were completely emotionally manipulated. They were told, like, well, this is the only choice your child has. Like, your child is transgender. This is innate. Your children already know from a young age what their gender is and whether they're transgender or not. So you need to give her what she wants. You need to say yes to this. You need to intervene medically as early as possible, because if you don't, she is going to seriously struggle. They brought up the suicide statistics in the transgender community, which are BS numbers, by the way, pulled from adult statistics.
Right.
And
many will have regrets about what they did.
But they don't talk about that.
No, of course
my
not.
mom and dad actually asked about that. They asked, okay, what are the chances that she regrets this? And they said, oh, it's less than about 1 or 2% who end up regretting.
No, it's not true.
No, we don't know. We still don't know what
Well,
the real
we're not
numbers
allowed
are,
to know.
but we know it's much higher.
Right, of course it is. Chloe Cole, go to CHOOO Cole over on Instagram, over on X. Follow her right now. Her story is unbelievable. You're 12. You're getting this advice. Your parents are paying for this ridiculous advice. And you're all seeing this person as an authority.
Yes.
You're going to listen to this person. When do you tell yourself, doctor's right, I am a boy? Because there has to be some day where you said, all right.
I mean, I believed
I'm in the wrong body.
very early on that I actually was a boy, somehow.
Even though everything showed you that you weren't, just because of how you felt,
Right.
you were convinced.
Right. I mean, the dogma of this community is that feelings trump reality. That feelings dictate reality. That if you identify as one thing, then you absolutely are that thing. That sex is not binary, but it's fluid, and that gender and sex are two completely separate things, and you can determine what you are just on a given day.
And of course, they're not. They're not different at all.
No.
Sex and gender are the same thing.
And regardless of how many treatments you have, whether it be surgery or drugs, it doesn't
Right.
actually change your sex, but they don't talk about that.
Let me ask you this. I've seen this in action. The trans community will now glom around you. You're with us. We got
Yes.
your back. You are a boy. Well, you're a he, him.
And it was that.
How immediate was that?
Well, I didn't really directly interact with the trans community until I started medically transitioning, actually. But seeing how other people were treated just for transitioning and the relationships that they would build within this community was something that really hit close to home for me as somebody who had been bullied, as somebody who was very socially isolated and wasn't really close to
Why were
anybody,
you
even my
bullied?
own family.
Why were you bullied? Because of how you looked? Because you were developing early? Because
Well, I
people
mean,
were
there
jealous?
was
I
all
mean,
sorts
what-
of different
what could it
things,
have
and a lot
been?
of it did come from jealousy. A lot of it did come from the way that I looked, and also my early development. But I also, because of my learning disability, I just behaved differently, and I was very, very quick to anger. A lot of kids would like play on they would make a game out of making me angry.
Wow.
And so I got picked on a lot as a kid.
Kids suck sometimes. No, they really do. Because obviously you're a very attractive human being. They must have been jealous. There was something else going on. And they're also little kids. What do they know? You should have gotten guidance from somebody who was going to direct you that here's what's going on with you. You think
Right.
you're this. These are the facts about why you're not. So
And I would argue that from very early grade levels, I was neglected by my teachers and by school staff. I even had like an IEP. I had certain educational needs that just would not meet with me.
wow.
And that was something that really fueled those feelings of isolation that eventually led to my transition. Knowing that a lot of the adults around me just didn't care.
Could a part of it have been, and I don't know anything from anything, if I'm wrong, just tell me that I'm wrong. Could a part of it have been where you bought into the trans stuff because it did give you an identity?
Yes.
It did make
It
people
gave me-
notice you as, I'm an important person too. Look at, here's why. I'm really a boy.
I mean, not initially. It was something that that was another thing that I got bullied for at first, just like trying to present myself as a boy and like looking awkward and androgynous when I started doing that. But it gave me a foundation that I felt like I could build myself off of,
Yeah.
independent of the people around me, regardless of their acceptance of me. It emboldened me in a way.
That's that person. Now you have an identity. Walking
Yes.
down the hall, people.
And I could throw away the shame of my past self,
why
the
the hell
girl
was
who
there
was bullied.
shame? My goodness. I mean, honestly, this doctor should have said, you should have no shame. You're a great human being. You're somebody who matters. Were you getting any of that affirmation at all? Was this person only about your trans?
It was a lot of I didn't really connect personally to my psychologist, so it was very difficult for me to open up with them. And even when I did, like, it was just very.
That actually makes sense.
It
I mean,
was
why
very,
would you? It was
very,
confusing.
very clinical in the way that it was all just treated like it was normal and par for the course, and that even my undiagnosed body dysmorphia and these feelings of discomfort around like my weight and my developing curves were just like, oh, it's because you're a boy, and it all makes sense. This is all just
Because boys wouldn't want that. They were telling you, boys wouldn't want their bodies to start looking like yours was looking. The doctor was just taking you down a sad road. So how do you end up, like I've seen this online, and you've seen this, and you've probably seen this even more than I have. When the trans community sees there's an opportunity, they jump in. You are us. You're with us. We're going to support you. Here are your pronouns. Fight the fight. Yell and scream at anybody who disagrees with you. Before we get to that part of it, which we're going to get to, and I appreciate you giving me some time, it's Chloe Cole. Make sure you go check out Chloe Cole on all socials, on Instagram and on X. It's CHOOO Cole. And she's not on TikTok. I don't know either. We're going to try to get her on TikTok. But, okay, so you're 12, you're getting the bad advice, but nothing's changed with you physically yet. Just mentally, they're really beating this into your head. When do you start actually taking things that start changing who you are?
About halfway through my 8th grade year was when I began physical treatment. Yes, I wasn't even graduated from middle school yet when I started. So
What is it, testosterone?
Yeah, I was put on...
They call it puberty blockers, which it's
yes,
not.
I was put on puberty blockers and testosterone. So the puberty suppressing agent was Lupron, which is a drug that has been subject to various lawsuits over the years, actually, because it's previously been used as a chemical castration agent.
Yes.
As a cancer drug.
They were giving it to you off label.
Endometriosis.
It was not made for this.
Yes, and these drugs have not been approved by the FDA for use in children for treating gender dysphoria.
Wow.
So I was experiencing basically an adolescent menopause because it stopped my puberty. It stopped my body from producing its own sex hormones. And then in that menopausal state, I was put on testosterone to masculinize my body, my face, my voice. Whoa. And it's a very powerful drug. By the time that I was in my freshman year of high school, I looked like a boy. I had a deeper voice, and eventually then pretty much all of my male peers and even a lot of the adult men around me, because I guess I got my dad's vocal genes, because he has a very deep voice as well.
It's not deeper than mine, but...
It definitely was not. No.
but so now not only are you being told you're a male, you're starting to look like a male, starting to feel like a male, starting to sound like a male.
And that's when the social part of my transition really truly started to begin, because, I mean, in 8th grade, before I knew that I wasn't going to convince anybody. It was like, these kids have known me since I was in elementary school. Everybody's seen me start to go through puberty. I'm not going to bother with them. I'm not going to bother to tell them about my feelings or that I'm doing this. So it was kind of a surprise.
So they still saw you as a girl.
Yeah.
Until you decided, I'm going to tell them what's going on.
Well, I didn't even tell them. I didn't tell most people. Okay. So it was just kind of confusing for them to see me all of a sudden become more and more androgynous until I looked like a boy. And again, once I was in high school, I just looked completely different.
Did you cut your hair? Did you try to look like a boy? What did you do?
I changed the way that I dressed, and I also, the effects of the drugs were very apparent in my physical appearance as well. And it got to the point where it's like, okay, we know she's a woman, but we don't really have a choice because she's freaking our brains enough.
Wow.
And a lot of kids, it was, once I was going to high school, it was a new school, so most people just didn't know. They had no idea that I was actually the opposite sex.
How long did you take this stuff?
I was on testosterone for about 3 years and the blockers for about a year and a half.
I mean, I'm pausing because I've got 5 daughters. I told you about this. One of my daughters is right here, my executive producer, Sam. I can't even imagine not sitting down. And again, this isn't a commentary or any sort of an indictment on your parents. Sounds like they tried to do the right thing and they believed the authority.
And they were given no chance.
If any authority, had they been in the room, had said this, they probably would have stopped them. I would take my kid away immediately. Say, no, this is a girl. Let's figure out why she doesn't feel that way. Not this is a boy. Let's figure out how to change the body.
And that's what they wanted. But they just kept getting...
Oh, that's what your parents
my mom
wanted.
and dad wanted.
Yeah.
But the physicians and the psychologists gave us no other choice. And my mom and dad's expectations were just completely thrown off.
This is the treatment.
And yes, and my mom and dad had been fighting teachers, had been fighting school staff, had been fighting different doctors and psychologists over the years for all sorts of different reasons. And it was a really tough fight for them to push for me. I don't blame them at all.
What state are you from?
I'm from California.
All right, so in California, that's liberal city. They want as many trans kids as they can. In fact, almost every Hollywood star now has a few trans kids, which is so crazy to me.
What are the statistical odds?
Right. Yeah, can you believe that? It's just crazy how they just happen to the same people. So those laws, not only they would have excluded your parents probably if they decided to say she can't transition.
I mean, if I had run away from my parents, if I had gone to CPS, they almost definitely would have taken me away.
And would have helped you transition more.
Yes.
It's Chloe Cole.
This is something that is super proliferative in the foster care system.
Were you thinking about leaving? Have your parents got in the way? Did that cross your mind?
No. I mean, thankfully, no. And I was never encouraged to because I love my mom and dad, and I love them very much, and I would have stayed with them in spite of it. But unfortunately, I know a lot of parents who have lost custody of their children over this.
Because the kids are brainwashed by whomever's telling them they're the opposite gender.
Yes, and many states are complicit in this ideology.
It's sick. It's so sick. It's Chloe Cole. Go to CHOOOCOLE over on X, on Instagram, and check out everything she does. I see you're in movies, you're doing videos, you're doing all sorts of stuff. This story is unbelievable. We just scratched the surface. So you're now in high school, been taking this stuff for 3 years. When is the idea of maybe let's physically change how I look? When does that pop into you? Does the doctors, is the same doctor, by the way, still advising you the entire time?
I had like all sorts of different doctors during this time. Some like I had switched to a bunch of different therapists and psychologists during this time. I had different specialists, but eventually, about like a year in, when I was 14, I started having consultations for surgery. And
At 14?
yes, I wanted to get rid of my breasts, to be able to take my shirt off and be able to like, have my shirt off while like swimming and hang out with my friends like the boys would, and like change in the locker room without like people worrying about like seeing like my binder, which for those of you who don't know what a binder is, it's essentially like a compression device for women or men with gynecomastia to squish down like the breast tissue to make it look more flat, more androgynous or more masculine. And I would wear this thing every day. I live in super hot California where it gets to like 100 degrees.
It's almost like if you have a rubber band around your wrist all day long, and then there's a big indentation there.
It's very tight.
Right.
You're not supposed to wear it for sustained periods of time, but I would wear it whenever I would go outside, basically, because
You wanted to get rid of what was going on up top.
Yeah, I didn't want people to know that I was actually a woman. I also had some sexual trauma that was playing into that as well. None of which was explored until after I had surgery, actually. But I had all these complicated feelings around my breasts, and I wanted them to be gone.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I got what I wanted, and I went under the knife when I was 15.
You weren't even an adult.
Not an adult. I was not an adult. I hadn't even had like an ID or a license yet.
Oh my goodness! I knew that you'd gone through the surgery. I didn't know how old you were. Crazy.
I wasn't even an adult by the time that I stopped transitioning. I was 16 when I decided to detransition, which came from a place of grieving over my breast, over my lost formative years, over the trauma that had not been explored and had been furthered.
I want to explore that with you in a second.
Yes.
Because was it one day? Was it a lead up to it? Was the surgery actually the turning point where you said, what the hell did I do?
The surgery was a major turning point.
Well, I want to get there. So you're 15. Your parents have to say, okay, you're not an adult yet. And they're still buying into what... I'm not blaming your parents.
They push back hard.
Don't misunderstand me. They sound like amazing human beings. I'm not calling them out at all.
Thank you.
But they're being told by an authority figure, this has to happen for your son. They're calling you their son.
Yes.
For your little boy. He's going to be a man and live as a man. You got to do this. And they want the best for you. And then you say, Mom, Dad, I do want to do it. You must have told them that. Because if you would have said, Mom, Dad, I don't want to do this, they would have stopped it. So you're full on mentally, you're with these doctors and these people pushing for that. And I feel for your parents, because again, I'm a parent of five daughters. So let's get to when the surgery happens. You're 15, finally get rid of these things I don't want on my chest. You go and do it. Is it almost immediate that you go, what the hell did I do? Or is that a process?
Well, the instincts of that came within weeks afterward.
Wow.
But I was basically like riding, like I was high on life afterward, you know? It was like, I'm finally over the biggest hump in my transition. Like, this is like basically the final step for me, at least as far as I know. I had no interest in genital surgery, thank God. But I thought like, wow, like I've achieved something. And that was the most celebrated I had been in pretty much my entire life.
You were exuberant. You were very happy.
Yes. And people around me, like my friends who call themselves like transgender allies, my transgender friends were all telling me like, wow, this is incredible. Like, you're so young. You're so brave. You're so like, this is such a beautiful experience for you. And it was like, man, life is good.
How long does it take for that to wear off?
Well, reality hit me pretty soon afterward when a week later I had to come back to the office and get my stitches taken out and start taking care of the wounds and everything, and looking down at this just awful sight on my chest, the scars, the surgical markings, and having to see that before and after every shower, every bath, just horrific to see that on my own body.
Shocking?
So look down, and at what was left of my breasts. It was very much a shock, not just physically, but also psychologically, to contend with that. And I would say the feelings of grief were almost immediate once that high wore off.
Really?
But I couldn't really name that feeling because I had never felt such pain, such agony in my whole life. It was
Emotionally.
Yes, it was so foreign. I couldn't put a name to it at all. But I started to realize I was missing my femininity in a lot of ways. The cracks were really starting to come through. And I would secretly go to the drugstore to buy makeup. I would buy women's clothes online.
Unbeknownst to anybody, you were starting to detransition already.
I didn't realize it, but yes.
Did you stop taking the medication right away?
Not until a few months afterwards.
So you're still on testosterone and so-called puberty blockers.
Yes.
And you're starting to buy makeup and girls' clothes.
Yes.
Wow.
And I thought, well, it's for expression. It's for fun. And this is something...
Playing dress up.
Yeah. Which is basically what I was doing the entire time anyways.
Right.
It was a big messed up game
Great
of pretend. But over time, like I started to think about my future. I was 16 years old by this point, and high school was going to end very soon for me. I'd have to start thinking about my adulthood. I hadn't even had like a first kiss yet. I hadn't had a boyfriend yet. So I thought, well, what's that going to look like for me? Am I going to get married one day? When I get married, what am I going to call myself? Am I going to be Mr.? Am I going to be Mrs.?
Wow.
What about when I have kids? Because, wait a minute. I want to have children one day, and I want them to be related to me. I want to have biological children. I want to have them naturally. What are my kids going to call me? Am I going to be mom? Am I going to be dad? Because it feels weird to think about it either way. And when I raise my kids, how is it going to affect them psychologically? How is it going to affect their development when they have a mother who is trying to basically cosplay as a man?
Wow. And how old
And then
what are you? You're like 16 years old
16,
when you're thinking
yes.
all this?
Yes,
That is
and
so heavy. Wow.
And I think what really finally broke everything was taking a psychology class and learning a little bit more about how children develop psychologically. And it made me reflect on myself a little bit and where my identity crisis really came from. I learned that attachment styles between parents and infants are really substantial to the way that they develop later on and how they connect with the world outside of them, outside of the family. And I realized I have an insecure attachment style. And I felt very isolated from everybody around me. And my identity issues were never about my body. It was never about my sex. It was never about me being a woman. And I learned a little bit more about the beauty of motherhood, about nursing. And I would cry. I would just sob reading these lessons because I would look down at my own body, picture an infant at my breast, and just think about how I never would even know what that is like. I never would even have the chance. And it broke me. And I couldn't move forward. I couldn't continue to go down this route that eventually could sterilize me. I didn't know whether I would be able to have a period or children ever again because I was so young when I started. I had only had maybe about 3 periods when they put me on these sterilizing drugs. And it was a really heavy point in my life. It was like rock bottom for me.
Who's the first person you tell? Do you go, Mom, Dad, I got to talk to you? What happens?
My mom and my boyfriend at the time.
Gotcha.
Let
me stop you. Hold on a second, Chloe Cole. You had a boyfriend? How cool was this guy that he was cool with whatever you were doing? Because you were, confused, you transitioned, you detransitioned. I don't know if he's still in your life. I'm not asking
he's
that
not,
question.
But he was a very kind person.
It's a pretty good guy.
With a lot.
Let's just get through this together. That's cool. So you told your mom and your boyfriend at the same time. You sat them both down. How did that work?
It was over the phone.
Okay.
I couldn't face anybody. I couldn't bear to be seen just sobbing and being as devastated and pathetic the way that I was in that moment. I just broke down one night crying, and I was like, I can't go forward. I regret everything. I don't know what to do anymore. And nobody knew what to do.
Did you consider doing something drastic? I don't want to say the word.
I thought about taking my own life for sure. during that first year of my detransition because
You're
it was just
such an important person. I'm so glad you're with us here.
I'm glad
I mean,
to be
honest
here.
to God, I want people to know again. I'm so drawn into the story that I don't say who it is often enough. And those of you listening on the radio, you're going to need to know who it is. It's Chloe Cole, CHOOOCOLE, over on social media, Instagram, on X. Take it anything that she does. Go and make sure you take it in this story. Spread this around to everybody else. I love that you're talking about it. So you tell mom, you tell the boyfriend. Do you already at that point know you're done transitioning?
Yeah.
You want to be you again?
I had never taken a testosterone shot ever again.
Wow.
After that.
That was it.
That was it. Cold turkey, which I don't think that's the best way to go about it for your health. But I could not even bear to even
It must
look
have
at
been
the
a
vial.
shock to your body. I mean, you're right.
Absolute shock to my body. I lost about 30 pounds in the span of 2 months. I was very sickly. And I mean, some people who knew me at the time, like, compared me to, like, well, they didn't say it then, but, like, looking back on it, looking at photos of me, I looked sick. I looked like an addict almost with how gaunt.
Were they
how
asking,
unhealthy.
are you taking something? Were people concerned that way?
Oh, people thought I was all sorts of things at the time. They thought that I was a transgender woman. They thought that I was a guy trying to be a woman at school.
Wow.
And they'd call me the T word. They'd make pronoun jokes at me because they thought that I was something I wasn't, which made me feel insane because I was trying to get out of that lifestyle. And it felt like I just kept getting sucked back in one way or another. The moment that I detransitioned and I talked about it, a lot of my transgender friends were just angry at me. They were so upset at just the idea. Yeah, like I was a traitor to them. I was a spoiled brat for getting everything that I wanted and then coming back out of it with regret and damage done to me.
How selfish
people
is
would
that
tell
of
me
them?
People would tell me to end my life over it.
That is so selfish. They needed you to help continue their misery.
Right.
That's what was going on.
It's one big misery party. And once I was out of it, they saw me as a threat, basically. And a lot of my closer friend group throughout my school years was very left-leaning, and they didn't really take super well to me eventually questioning like a lot of like the broader leftist ideology.
Right.
And I also was just like very emotionally unstable at the time, so I can't blame them for eventually.
You guys are all
cutting
still
ties
young.
with me.
Everybody's
Yeah, very
emotionally
young.
unstable back then.
I can't expect a bunch of 16, 17, 18-year-olds to know how to deal with somebody who was as unwell as I was. But that was what was supposed to be my senior year. What was supposed to be the most fun, the most carefree year out of all my high school years was the absolute worst. And like there were rumors going around that I was sleeping around at the time because, well, I didn't dress very modestly at the time. My last memories of what it meant to be a woman were from what I was seeing from my peers and from online. It was like a very, very pornified idea of femininity. And so I would wear very short skirts. I would wear like I would wear like crop tops and stuff. And so people thought like, oh, she must be doing bad things. But the funny part is I had no friends. I would spend my lunch period just like playing video games or like playing games on my phone because I had nothing else to do. And eventually,
but it's also a matter of overcompensating, isn't it? You're like, I am so not a boy now.
Yeah.
I am so not a man.
And I
Watch
wanted to
me.
feel pretty.
I am woman. Hear
I
me
wanted to
roar.
feel
I mean,
pretty.
Right. And that was your idea of pretty because of what you faced when you were younger.
Right. And it was like coming back to femininity. I kind of wanted to like push the boundary and see where it was and figure out like who I was by swinging from one extreme to the other. And eventually I just dropped out of high school later that year because it was like I have no friends. I'm not even like I'm so unwell that I can't even get out of bed some days, and I'm not even going to school. Like I'm getting.
You learned enough. You're very smart. You didn't need to stay in high school. No,
Eventually I got my state certificate.
Good.
So.
Did you go to college?
I took like one college class and was like, I don't feel like doing this.
No, I got you. It doesn't fit with everybody. I mean, Charlie says it's a scam here at the TPUSC event that we're at.
I mean, having spoken at many colleges, I'm not exactly impressed.
No, I'm with you. I've seen the videos. It's Chloe Cole, CHOOOCOLE. Go follow her on Instagram. Go follow her on X. Let's get to the full detransition.
Yes,
because you said when I decided to transition, but that's going to be a process. And the process is very simply that I now need to either reverse or just stop doing whatever it was that changed my body as much as it did. As you said, you lost 30 pounds almost immediately. Mm-hmm. A lot of that muscle, obviously, on testosterone. It also makes you hold water. So that could be another thing. But how about the effects of so-called puberty blockers? I mean, do those just go away when you stop taking it? Because some will say it lasts forever.
I mean, I have lasting complications from all three of the treatments. There's this misconception going around that the blockers and even the hormones are reversible.
Yeah.
And some effects are to an extent, but all in all, like once you go on the treatments, there's not really any going back, even if you stop taking them. The puberty blockers have left me with joint issues, with back issues. The testosterone, I've had issues with pelvic pain, with my cycle, with urinary tract issues, and.
But you did get your period back.
Yes, miraculously it came back about 2 months after.
Was that like a really happy day? It sounds crazy, but I'm so glad I got it.
Yeah, I never thought I would be happy about a period in my life, but I mean, it kind of sucks. But I'm also thankful for it every time it comes around because it's a sign that they're in working order and
Good.
I'm healthy. And
how is your blood work now? Do you get it checked often? I mean, are you back to normal levels, whatever normal is?
I'm not sure exactly. I think that I might be imbalanced. And it's common for detransitioned women to have thyroid issues, so I should probably check out my thyroid as well.
Yeah.
There's just all sorts of things that we don't even know the full extent of the effect of these drugs, especially on the developing body or after years or decades.
It's not made for this.
No, the human body is not meant to sustain massive doses of opposite sex hormones over the course of years. But I tried to go back to my doctors for help with my detransition, for guidance, and even for things like
a different doctor.
No, same doctors, because I thought like they must have a case.
Not the initial psychologist.
Not the initial psychologist,
right?
No.
Okay.
But the physicians. I thought, well, they must have a case like me. They must have protocols to deal with patients who regret this and who are stopping the treatments, right? No, there's no acknowledgement of detransitioners in the medical system. There's no codes. There's no standards written for us.
Because you're not supposed to detransition.
No, it's supposed to be. Supposedly it's a permanent thing. Supposedly it's something that's innate.
Wow.
Which is what they told my mom and dad. But so I was told things like, I've never had a patient like you before. We've never seen a case like yours before, which isn't true. I know at least one woman who has gone to the same doctors, younger than I was actually.
Yeah.
And when I was asking for help with complications, my surgeon was like, he actually gave me advice that gave me a skin infection. And my endocrinologist wouldn't even give me like regular blood tests or even send back the results with a chart with guidelines for a young woman, even though I specifically told her, I'm not a man anymore.
Right.
I want to know where my health is at, or my hormone levels are at, like relative to a healthy young woman my age. Nope, they kept sending it back with male ranges.
That's an easy request.
Yeah, easy request, a click of a button.
But they refuse to let you say, I'm now a woman again.
Yeah, I still get letters from my old healthcare provider referring to me as a young man named Leo.
Wow. You went by Leo for a while?
Yes.
It's Chloe Cole, CHOOOCOLE. Go follow her on Instagram. Go follow her on X. Let's get to where you are today. I want to make some observations, and I don't want you to get mad at me. Okay, you promise you won't get mad at me?
Not many things make me mad.
First of all, you're extremely feminine. You're clearly a woman. It's somebody who nobody could mistake you for anybody other than a woman. I know your story, though. Is your voice deeper than it should have been?
I mean,
you've got a nice deep voice. I mean, as a woman, it sounds like a womanly voice.
I like my voice. It's definitely deeper than it would have been. It has a quality to it that I think is unique, and I appreciate. But it's not where it would have been.
Okay.
I don't know what I would have sounded like, but you know what's funny is that my voice, it wasn't supposed to lighten the way that it has. I thought that I was going to have a deep voice forever, and yet somehow
it has come up.
Yes.
Okay.
It used to be a lot deeper. I used to really sound like a young man. Not quite. You have a very like rich, smooth.
I've got that
voice.
Loud, deep voice. Yeah,
I did not have that, but it was very.
But it has lightened in tone.
And
Great.
that's something that doesn't happen to everybody.
'Cause I didn't know.
There's no guarantee of that happening. It wasn't like it was. It just wasn't something that was supposed to.
Are you naturally in good athletic shape? And again, I'm not like, hey, no, but you're showing your arms, you're showing your legs.
I've got a little bit more definition, and I mostly get that from my mom.
Were you in shape like that before you started all of this stuff?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
But definitely.
So it's nature too.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other effects that you have from detransitioning? Like, I don't know what happens. I've had testosterone since birth, obviously, a lot of it. I wouldn't know what it would be like to take a bunch of estrogen. I would have no clue. I have a little bit of estrogen, all men do. But did you have to take estrogen to bring back the feminine side?
I don't know if I
or did
have
it naturally
to, but
just restart?
I haven't been taking
Does that
any
naturally restart?
exogenous hormones. Yeah, it naturally restarted, which is
Thank God, right?
Once you're past a certain point on hormones, or once you've like been surgically sterilized, your body just is not able to do that.
For some, it doesn't. Right.
Yeah.
Thank God, right?
I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful that God has healed my body and my mind and my soul in such a way.
I got to ask you the last question. You ready for the last question? Why are you doing this? You could have done all this yourself, could have kept it to yourself. That's your journey. Your closest people, your parents, your friends, your doctors know about this. What made you say, because you don't come off as I'm an overly loud guy, and I do this for a living, been doing it a long time. You don't come off as somebody who's aggressive or that seeks the spotlight even. Why'd you do it?
I started to feel more and more compelled to speak out as time went on. Because, well, there were quite a few reasons. I started to learn that there were I learned that there was a community of other people like me, and they had helped to guide me and give me hope during the very early parts of my detransition. And I felt like I wanted to give back to these people because they were still a community of people who very much were voiceless. And I knew at the time, even though there weren't any children who I was speaking to at the time, or people who had been through it as children, they had to be out there. I'd seen the other child patients waiting in the office. I'd seen the other children in the hospital system.
And think about that. You're walking out and you see them waiting to go do it too.
Yeah. I mean, I had been to a seminar where they were talking to children about getting transgender surgeries.
Wow.
And I wanted to advocate for them. The older I got, the more beautiful I realized that innocence was, and how as an adult, how every adult has a responsibility to advocate for and defend that innocence.
Amazing.
And I'm the baby of the family. I'm younger than my siblings by quite a few years, and so I never really had to babysit or anything like that growing up. So I never really had that up close look of that until my siblings started having children of their own, and seeing, like, playing with and taking care of like my little nephews and nieces. It was like some light just flicked on in my brain. I was like, this is precious. I have to do something about this. And I want to live in a world where I can be comfortable not only seeing my nephews and nieces growing up, but also my own future children and grandchildren one day. And, well, I had nothing to lose at the time. I had lost all my friends. I had lost basically the entire foundation of my life, my entire identity up until that point. And eventually, I was going to be out of high school. I was still in high school at the time that I started to speak out.
It's crazy. This all happened in such a short time.
My life is a completely blank slate. What better time to dive in than now?
Part two of the last question I'm going to ask. How many stories do you think you've seen? How many people have you talked to? How many kids went, thank you. You finally told me something that makes sense. Is it a lot? Is it a little?
More than I could count.
Really?
I mean, I've met in person at least 100 other detransitioners at this point.
Goodness.
Many of them I just randomly meet, like at schools, at different events I go to. There's one here right now. There's another detransitioner here right now.
I did not know that.
And I've probably spoken to hundreds more in passing online,
right.
But I think there's a network of thousands of us out there, somewhere on the internet, somewhere out there in the world right now. And I've spoken to many more parents who have had to deal with this in some way, parents of transgender people or detransitioners, and people who have had to deal with this in their community or in their profession in all sorts of different ways. This is something that has infected basically every facet of American life. It's infected all of our institutions, namely healthcare, obviously, but also of education and our government. And it's had this just horrific trickle-down effect into our lives, and it absolutely needs to be, this ideology needs to be eradicated and completely removed from American life.
I absolutely love that you had the strength to realize what was going on. And I know that you've helped, you're saying hundreds, it's probably thousands, and there are people who are learning from your story.
Yeah, potentially hundreds of thousands.
Well, no, absolutely, because they didn't have anybody who would actually say, well, let me hear your side of it. They were just told, like you were, this is what you are, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to, hey, mom and dad, this is who this person, this is a boy, it's a he, him, deal with it, and this person will only be happy if you do what I say do. And we know there's a big money-making scheme going on with that.
Yes.
We know that there's also potentially, and maybe this is into conspiracy theory land, but there's also culling the herd. This is also about lessening the population. There's some nut jobs out there that would like for you not to have babies.
Right.
And I hope you have 10. You know what I mean? Because more of you would be wonderful out there.
Well, thank
so
you. It's very
thank God that
sweet.
you have that strength. I mean, honest to goodness, I'm so proud of you.
Thank
We
you.
don't know each other that well, but I feel like I know you very well now. I'm super proud of you. If you were my daughter, I'd be high-five. I'm going to high-five you anyway. But if you were my daughter, if you were my daughter, I would just be, you'd be on my shoulders and I'd be telling the world what you did.
Thank you
Because
so
you're doing
much.
it so beyond yourself. I can't even begin to express what I'd like to say, and I use words for a living. So thank God you did that. And thanks for
you.
coming on the show.
Of course. Thank you for giving me this platform to share not only my testimony, but also to shed light on. This is something that I think is a complete crime against humanity. It's complete ignorance of the human rights of children, of young people, of their parents, their families. I think it ignores the beauty of humanity. Not just in a biblical way, but also just the beauty of our design as
Absolutely.
men and women. And these people deserve, the people who are struggling with these feelings, they deserve to be given another chance. They don't deserve to be beholden to a lifetime of pain, of being beholden to the pharmaceutical industry, of being on drugs and different interventions for the rest of their lives, not knowing who they truly beautifully are.
You're amazing. Seriously, people will get so much out of this, and I can't thank you enough. It's Chloe Cole, CHOOOCOLE over on X, on Instagram. That's going to do it for this program. Chloe, thanks again. You're amazing. Really, really appreciate you. That's going to do it for Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags. The next episode to drop very soon. Keep it here.